A física quântica é uma das áreas mais promissoras que integra ciência e espiritualidade na atualidade no mundo. O nosso próximo conferencista é reconhecido um dos mais importantes físicos quânticos da atualidade no mundo. Trata-se do físico da Universidade de Oregon, indiano radicado nos Estados Unidos, Amit Goswami. Ele vai falar justamente sobre isso, que a física quântica traz um propósito para o mundo. Vamos à conferência.
Hello everyone, I am Amit Goswami, speaking about the quantum worldview and how we can bring about quantum worldview to change ourselves and change society. I call this movement quantum activism. It is a fact that although quantum physics has been around for 90 years, its message has not gone into the general public, nor has the message been generally accepted by the scientific establishment and physics establishment especially. And because of that, the rest of our scientists, even though they are into post-materialism, they are not aware that they have to work within some guidelines that quantum physics is giving us without any debate, because these are experimental facts. Experimental fact number one. There are two realms of reality, two domains. There is no questions to be asked about this because this is experimental. There is space-time domain of reality in which velocities are finite, communications occur with local signals. And there is a non-local domain of reality in which everything is interconnected, connection is instantaneous, velocity is infinite, no signal is required. This non-local domain of potentiality existence of it, because it's now verified, experimentally established, just as quantum physics theorizes about it from the beginning, gives us the possibility of integrating certain ideas of spiritual traditions with science. Spiritual traditions have always held that there is another domain of reality, which they think is more real, and they have always given causal attribute to that domain. Likewise, there is absolutely undebatable evidence, because without it we cannot resolve the quantum measurement paradox, that there has to be a force coming from this non-local domain. This force, quantum measurement theory shows, is actually a choice by consciousness. This interconnected domain can be easily seen to be our consciousness itself in its original non-local form, and it has causal power. This causal power we call downward causation, because it is a causation from a higher consciousness. And this too is undebatable, because without it we cannot solve the quantum measurement paradox. This is the only paradox-free solution that can be found, and for the verification of it is David Bohm's work, which did a certain mathematical approximation to quantum physics and showed that there indeed is a quantum potential, a force exerted by the domain that is outside of space and time. So in this way, these two aspects, that there is another domain and there is a force that comes to us in the immanent domain, this cannot be debated. And everyone, all post-materialist science, must work within these two constraints. Having said that, there is of course more to the human experience than material. The assumption of scientific materialism is that matter is everything. But of course, we have now very, very, very good evidence and arguments in favor of a meaning-giving mind, and also very good arguments and evidence in favor of a vital body. In the work of Rupert Sheldrake especially, we find a very good argument in favor of morphogenetic fields that are blueprints of biological form. And then, of course, we have argued for a long time, physicists and philosophers, that the question, where do physical laws come from, always comes to the question of archetypes. There must be an archetypal domain of experience from which the physical laws come, our virtues come, like love, our sense of beauty, goodness, these things, ethics, they all arise from this archetypal domain. The way we experience it is intuition. So we have, aside from sensing, which is material, we have feeling, the vital energies, thinking, meaning, and intuiting, the archetypes that gives us values. And some of them are spiritual values. Some of them are artistic values, like beauty. These are just a rendition of human experiences. The progress that has occurred is that we have found very, very wonderful arguments, some of it quite mathematical. For example, that computers cannot process meaning, the mathematical arguments exist in favor of it. Archetypes, of course, people have from various times found that Plato's original argument that our intuitions must come from archetypes is physical laws must reflect some fundamental eternal truth. These are very, very good assumptions. Carl Jung was the one who made the assertion that our intuitions are intuitions of archetypes. So all this is fine. So we can say that there are 4 different kinds of experiences. And now we can make a complete quantum worldview by realizing that, well, if consciousness is the ground of being, this domain of potentiality, then why restrict the possibilities only to material possibilities? Why not include the mind, the vital, and the archetypes, which Aurobindo calls supramental, so I'll use the word supramental. Why not include all of them by saying that all of them are possibilities of consciousness to choose from? Consciousness chooses, the manifest world happens in our experience. It's not permanently laid out there as materialists think. The permanence arises from the fact that the material world is made differently, micro making up macro, and the macro objects lose their quantum movement, most of it. And this is why the appearance of semi-permanence. But really, nothing is out there permanently, as physicists have noted for a long time. The process of measurement, when analyzed properly, shows that the brain has to be very special. It is a measurement apparatus of sorts, but it is a very special measurement apparatus where the perception apparatus and measurement apparatus, memory apparatus get all mixed up. And this mixing up is special for the brain, and this makes what we call the appearance of self. Consciousness identifies with the brain as it collapses the possibility waves of the brain. So in this way, we can understand why we experience the world as I looking at an object. In other words, subject-object split is explained. The ego in this view arises from conditioning. But conditioning of the mathematics, quantum mathematics more and more gives way to determinism because of the feedback from memories. So when you take all this into account, you have basically a good rendition of what the human condition is about. You have the true self nature of the human self. At a deeper level, it's quantum self, it's spontaneous, it's creative. At a lesser level, it's ego, it's behavioral, it's conditionable. But even at the lower level, the freedom doesn't completely go away. Freedom to say no, for example, is the crucial point for opening the ego towards the quantum self. So in this way, certain aspects of spiritual traditions, again, can be included. Spiritual traditions talk about spiritual transformation. The transformation is about using creativity to change the conditioned self that we live, namely the ego. Quantum physics also is solidly embracing the concept of unconscious that Freud first brought into psychology. What is unconscious? Unconscious is where there is no split between subject and object. Consciousness and its possibilities are one and the same thing. Unconscious and then conscious awareness in which there is subject-object split. We also call this unmanifest-manifest distinction. In our outer, automatically is explained basis of dualism. First of all, mind is included, and mind here to be generalized as psyche, consisting of the vital, the mental, and the supramental. All of these constitute psyche. Why is it internal? Because quantum movement governs the rules, and quantum movement, there is no micro-macro. Quantum movement persists all the way, and therefore between your observation and my observation, between your measurement and my measurement, there is always too much quantum movement, too much change in the possibilities available for your choice vis-a-vis my choice, and therefore what I choose and what you choose would be widely different. Experiences will be private, and therefore we think that the psyche is all internal. Whereas for the material world, because it's macro, quantum movement is subdued, and therefore you and I tend to choose virtually the same position for the chairs, tables, and the moon, and therefore we see them all at the same place, and we develop a consensus world of outside of us. So in this way, internal-external dichotomy, which has given us dualism for thousands of years, disappear. So in other words, we are beginning to understand the human condition fully. And now is the time to examine what should happen then to our society. Of course, from the get-go, quantum physics says that there is this enormous possibility of taking charge of the prospect of true freedom of choice. Not only the ego's freedom of choice to say no to conditioning, but true freedom of choice consisting of real creativity. Quantum physics makes it clear that the creative process has to consist of not only preparation, but also a period of unconscious processing, just relaxing so that the stuff can become possibilities for the unconscious to process. And in that processing, the possibilities can grow, and possibilities will grow if you give it time. And therefore, it is important for the creative process to have both focused attention, doing, and also being, relaxation, in which the possibility waves can grow, becoming bigger and bigger pools of possibility to choose from. In this way, the creative process is completely understood. The insight that happens when we do the process of do and be appropriately, which is alternatively doing and being, I sometimes call it do, be, do. And this process leads to the quantum leap of insight, a discontinuous transition of thought that gives us the creative insight that enables us to make a creative product, manifest. That's the fourth stage of creativity. And so this is the very, very wonderful gift of quantum worldview. It brings the full force of creativity. It says that, well, look, creativity has two aspects, not one, not just preparation, not just doing, but also being. And in fact, doing and being skillfully, do, be, do, in that way. And then the insight comes, and then we manifest. In the manifest also, there is a do, be, do aspect in the sense of there is a flow between quantum self and the ego, which is a very wonderful aspect of the creative process. So in this way, when we partake of the creative process, what do we do with it? We recognize that another thing that the quantum worldview does, which is very wonderful and very new and very timely, is to bring purposiveness in the world. How does quantum physics bring purposiveness in the world? What is the criterion for choice? I said consciousness chooses out of the possibilities that are offered to it. What is the objective criterion for choice? This objective criterion is found to be the whole purposiveness of the universe. The reason that the universe is, the reason that the universe evolves, all that has to do with this purpose, is to make representations of the subtle. The representations of the subtlest of the subtle, the archetypes, that is what is going on right now. And if you look at civilization, it is nothing but making more and more sophisticated, better and better representations of the archetypes. If you compare our olden history, you find enormous violence existed. Today, much less. So we are making better and better representation of the archetype of love and goodness. That's pretty obvious. Similarly, we have discovered truth, much better, scientific laws. This is a very recent finding, right, in the last 400 years, basically. So in this way, we find that we have a purpose in the world in addition to cause. This is something very important to recognize. Likewise, the human life consists not only of the logos, the laws of the causes that operate, but also mythos, the way purpose unveils in the human life, in the human society. So this is where we have to be really original now. This has never happened before in human societies. We have to recognize that we have a purpose. We have to become activists for the archetypes. We really have to bring the archetypes better and better in manifestation in our society. We still have relatively poor rendition of love. We still have too much violence. We still have too much ugliness in society. We have still too much selfishness instead of goodness. We have too much injustice rather than justice. These things have to go. These things have to go, and we already have the institutions ready for them. We have discovered under the aegis of the worldview of modernism, which again was very similar to quantum in the sense that both mind and matter were valued. And in that era, 18th century, we discovered the three great institutions of modern civilization, namely capitalism, democracy, and liberal education. Of course, liberal education has become now very dogmatic education because the higher education institutions especially teach only scientific materialism. But hopefully that will give way to quantum worldview soon, and creativity will come back, and then things can begin to happen. How do I envision this change? Well, special economics and politics. So let's quickly talk about this. We have the subtle energies that we recognize now. We have vital energy, we have mental meaning, spiritual values. Bring them into economic field. How? Well, Abraham Maslow suggested in the 60s. We have higher needs beside the material needs. When the material needs are satisfied, we satisfy higher needs. What are the higher needs? They are vital energy needs, mental meaning needs, and spiritual value needs. Make them commodities of the economic market and let the market forces act on them. What is market forces after all? This invisible hands of the free market that Adam Smith first talked about. What is it? Well, in the new science, it is clearly recognized to be the purposive movement of consciousness itself. And therefore, when we are fulfilling the purpose of consciousness, we are in accordance with the invisible hands of the free market, and that will help us change the society towards a new quantum economics, which will include the subtle energies as commodities. Now, I agreed that part of the subtle energies we cannot make into a material product. The human being is the product. For example, love Obviously, we cannot put, except for romantic love, we cannot put in matter. How does unconditional love be put into matter except for the human being itself? And therefore, we have a new concept of economic product, the human being itself, human capital. Now, this is very interesting because at a time when we are facing human jobs being taken over by robots, it's essential that we create new function for the human being. What will the human being do when robots do all the routine work? So the envisioning by quantum economics is very simple. Human beings will become human capital, will develop themselves, personal growth work through quantum activism. And this will make them into renditions of love, beauty, justice. These are embodied qualities of human beings, and that's what we call human capital. Finally, politics. Now, we all know politics has become very corrupted in every culture, and what is happening is politicians who were supposed to be in democracy, they were supposed to empower people. Instead, today, we find elitism is rampant, the politicians are empowering themselves. These got to give way to empowering people. How do we do that? Quantum worldview has the answer. Everybody becomes creative, everybody becomes individual, and the society completely changes from elitism into equality. Everybody participates. And that's the answer to the problem of political power sharing. In this way, I'm envisioning perhaps what sounds to you as utopia, but it is very doable because it's solidly based on experimental data. Thank you.